everyone, Nothony Teeth Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Darkside album, Spiral. This is a brand new LP from Nicolas, Jaar, and Dave Harrington's Darkside, a side project of sorts. Can I say that? Can I call it a side project without being dismissive toward the project itself? All I can say is these guys come out with a lot of music, they're juggling a lot of records, and Darkside, while it's there and it's great, it doesn't always seem to take priority. In fact, it's been a while since the last album. Back in the early 2010s, Dave and Nicolas did a cool single together. They dropped a series of tracks that are like these creative little revisions of songs from the last Daft Punk record. Then they dropped a full-length record of original material, Psychic, which was endlessly groovy, spacious, psychedelic, and dark. Certainly not a perfect album, but one of the better LPs of that year. Since Psychic dropped in 2013, Darkside has been pretty much dormant. That is until recently. We had a single late in 2020, a few more teasers in the lead up to this new album now. Here it is, over 7 years later, and it still sounds like a Darkside album, but with the duo subtly shifting around their influences a bit. Spiral is still a very linear, heady, groove-oriented experience, but now I think the guitar and vocals drive things a bit more. They are a little more the engine of the project, to the point where I'd say this record is honestly like an even combination of art, prog, and psych rock, but all of that being stripped down to the most barest of essentials, giving it the most meditative and skeletal presentation possible. To jump right into it though, I will say the intro track on this thing is a little rough going. I get the noisy and kind of tribal vibe it's going for with its really heavy rustic drumming as well as chanted vocals, but for some reason there's definitely something unpleasant and a little sour about the singing. I can't quite tell if it's the falsetto or is it some of the effects laid into the vocals. Either way, it's a little too grating. It's tinny, it's shrill, it's unpleasant. It doesn't really fit with the relaxed and almost cerebral feel the whole thing is going for. The track is also loaded with a ton of sounds that aren't blended into the instrumental all that well, so while there are some steady grooves going on in the background, occasionally we'll hit like a glitch or some kind of sound effect that just seems way louder than everything else, and it harshes the mood a bit. Still, I think it's an intriguing track and effectively sets the tone instrumentally for the entire record, but it still could use some smoothing out, I think. But the ride past this point on the LP is actually pretty enjoyable. Not only that, but a good deal of the material on this record manages to be kind of catchy. The fuzz bass and falsetto vocals that hit at the start of The Limit are an instant earworm. The beats and guitar leads that build underneath just go on to enhance the song's groove and enchanting character. From there, it's the atmosphere, it's the textures, it's the rawness, it's the beauty of it. I mean, hallmarks of any great Nicolas Jaar production. The song also finishes off with a neat freewheeling kind of chaotic jam. The following the question is to see it all takes things in a more abstract direction, with eerie synthesizer passages and acoustic breaks that contrast really nicely, eventually building up into what feels like this semi-Floydian jam. But if you could embody one of those haunting, strange, lengthy Pink Floyd instrumentals in a way that is a lot more stripped back and simple. LAWMAKER is another cerebral smash, not only with these hypnotic and sandy grooves and guitars, but poetry that seems to display cultish levels of devotion to something or someone. With the track I Am the Echo, we're really going all out with the psych shit on the sitar in the mix, the heavy drum patterns. You know, there are some neat passages of this track, but it does feel almost cliche in how it's trying to be like this international psych blend. It's by no means awful, but I do love the change of pace the title track of the album brings a lot more. It's a sparkling acoustic odyssey with delay-soaked vocals, droning waves of bass. Once again, I think those Pink Floyd influences come back, but I'd like to emphasize that they're here, but only in a way where they don't seem too obvious. Like, the sound is only present in my mind when I'm thinking about it, which I think is like the best way to be influenced by something subtly. Liberty Bell, in a way, even though it is still a subtle track, I think is a banger. I think it's maybe the only song here that really could have fit into the track list of the last LP and sounded very much at home with its gentle driving beats and guitar licks. And on top of it, if I'm being frank, if we just stripped it back to the rhythms, like this beat could have easily soundtracked a track or two off of the first Against All Logic record, that other much more house-oriented Nicolas Jaar project. But the shimmering acoustic layers and disembodied vocals on this track brings a new dynamic to that recipe. Inside Is Out There is the longest track on this LP by a mile, and it's a song that you can really get lost in. It has some of the tightest and most syncopated rhythms on the entire LP. There's almost like a slow burning krautrockian tension to it and the way it progresses. It doesn't necessarily reach the biggest climax or finale, but there are a series of ghostly and drony tones and vocals that come into play at some point that leaves things feeling quite chilling. However, the closing track is another moment where I'm less than enthusiastic about the vocals. Even though I did like the unorthodox falsetto being used throughout much of the LP, it just doesn't seem too steady in this particular take on this particular track. The way the end kind of rocks out a little bit is a nice touch, and I think is a sign of that more rock-oriented shift this album has undergone and has played through pretty well, but it still remains that I wish the vocal performance on this track were better and redone. Still, with that being said, look, Darkside, it's been a while. I wish it didn't take this long to get a new record, but the one that we got here is pretty good. There's a lot of standout tracks. There are a lot of interesting moments. Everything cohesively went into a subtly new direction. Production, for the most part, was pretty good. Yeah, there were a few sounds and vocal takes here and there that I wasn't crazy about. But yeah, overall this project is pretty dark. It's neat. It's moody. Once more, cerebral and groovin'. I'm feeling a strong 7 to a light 8 on this one. Transition. Have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head, it's another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, music forever.